The film begins at night when a woman named Sharon is partying with her friend Rose at a lively bar in Louisville. That night, she drinks far too much alcohol and ends up getting completely drunk. Fortunately, Rose stays by her side the entire time, patiently taking care of her until she finally sobers up the next morning. It soon becomes clear that Sharon has been struggling with alcohol addiction for years, something that has deeply affected her life and relationships. Rose, who genuinely cares for her, then encourages her to attend a support meeting where people with personal struggles come together to share their stories, heal, and strengthen one another. However, Sharon doesn't seem interested in joining such a meeting and brushes off the suggestion. Later, Sharon stops by a small mini-market to buy more alcohol. While paying for her drinks, she accidentally glances at a newspaper headline that catches her attention. The article tells the heartbreaking story of a 5-year-old girl named Michelle Schmidt, who has recently lost her mother. Michelle suffers from a rare and dangerous liver disease called biliary atresia, a condition in which one or more bile ducts become abnormally narrow, blocked, or even completely absent. According to the article, Michelle's only hope for survival is a liver transplant. She lives with her older sister, Ashley Schmidt, and their father, Ed Schmidt. The article also mentions that the funeral for Michelle's mother will be held on Saturday at 2 p.m. at a local church. After reading the story, Sharon feels deeply moved and decides to attend the funeral out of empathy. When she arrives at the church, she meets Michelle and Ashley and gently introduces herself. However, Ashley doesn't welcome Sharon warmly, as she's just a complete stranger who suddenly appeared during their time of mourning. Sharon explains that she read about their family's tragic story in the newspaper, and that's why she came, to offer her condolences and support. She also tells them that if they ever need help with anything, she's more than willing to assist in any way she can. Later that evening, Sharon tells Rose about Ed's family and says that she truly wants to help Michelle by organizing a charity hair marathon at her salon to raise money for their mounting medical expenses. Rose immediately supports her decision, touched by Sharon's sincerity. That same night, the scene shifts to Ed, who has just returned home from work. He quietly walks into Michelle's room and feeds her dinner. During their conversation, Michelle keeps asking where her mother is, an innocent yet heartbreaking question that Ed struggles to answer. His mother, who is temporarily living with them, tries her best to comfort both of them while helping Ed cope through these dark days. The next day, heavy rain pours outside as Ed reads a bedtime story with Michelle in her room. They laugh and smile together, creating a rare moment of joy. But suddenly, Ed notices that Michelle's eyes are turning yellow, one of the serious symptoms of her liver disease. Panicked, he immediately rushes her to the hospital through the raging storm, where she receives an emergency blood transfusion. Thankfully, her condition stabilizes for the night. Later, however, a doctor informs Ed that Michelle's situation is worsening rapidly, and without a liver transplant soon, she may have only 6 months to live. This devastating news shatters Ed's spirit. He has just lost his beloved wife, and now his daughter's life hangs by a thread. To make things even worse, he doesn't have enough money to pay the growing hospital bills. His credit cards keep getting declined, and he doesn't have any health insurance to cover the costs. Meanwhile, Sharon becomes even more determined to help the Schmidt family. She begins hosting charity haircut events at her salon, inviting locals to participate and donate whatever they can. That evening, when Ed returns home from grocery shopping, his mother reminds him that he forgot to buy noodles, even though she had written it clearly on the shopping list. Ed explains in frustration that he didn't have enough money to buy everything they needed. Just then, there's a knock at the door. It's Sharon. She stops by to check on the family, and they end up sharing a simple but heartwarming dinner together. The next morning, Sharon calls the hospital pretending to be Ed's accountant and relative to settle his medical bills. But when she hears the total amount, she's completely shocked. The bill has reached a staggering $432,000, while she has only raised about $3,000 from her charity marathon so far. Determined not to give up, Sharon goes straight to Ed's house, walks in without hesitation, and starts sorting through his financial documents, almost as if she were his personal accountant. Then, she sits with Ed to discuss all the bills in detail and tries to come up with possible solutions. It's unclear what truly drives Sharon to go to such extraordinary lengths, but one thing is certain: she does it out of genuine compassion and kindness. She also contacts someone named Derek, though it's not yet revealed why or how he's connected to her. A few days later, a powerful storm hits the area, damaging and destroying several houses AC Rosetown. Seeing an opportunity to earn money, Ed applies for a job at a roofing company, since after the storm, around 200 roofs were damaged overnight, meaning there will be plenty of work available. With Sharon's help in negotiating, Ed manages to secure a contract to repair 50 roofs before winter. It's an extremely tough job, one meant for at least 5 workers, but Sharon sees it as a valuable opportunity. She tells Ed that by doing it themselves, they could earn 4 times more profit. Sharon advises him to always say yes to every opportunity first, whether easy or difficult, and only afterward figure out how to make it work. Sharon also begins distributing charity flyers all around town to raise more awareness and donations for the Schmidt family's cause. A few days later, an unfortunate accident occurs. Ed's mother sprains her ankle while playing with the children. When Ed asks why she didn't call him immediately, she explains that she didn't want to rely on him for everything. Besides, Sharon had already taken her to the hospital and made sure she was okay. Ed's mother even tells him that she's perfectly fine with Sharon helping to take care of the kids a few nights a week to give her a much-needed break. This marks a turning point as both families slowly begin to trust and rely on one another, setting the stage for an inspiring and emotional journey that will test their strength, faith, and compassion in the days to come. Then, Ed went upstairs to find Sharon with Michelle and Ashley. He looked visibly upset because Sharon and the children had been going through Teresa's personal belongings, his late wife's cherished possessions. Sharon immediately apologized for touching Teresa's things without permission, explaining that she only wanted to help the kids cope with the gloomy atmosphere and cheer them up a little. Feeling embarrassed and remorseful, Sharon quietly excused herself and left the house to give them space. The next scene shows Sharon sitting at a bar, meeting with Derek, who turns out to be her biological son. From their cold interaction, it's clear that their relationship is strained and filled with emotional distance. The film doesn't reveal much yet about their past, but Derek's behavior makes it obvious that he still harbors resentment toward his mother, perhaps from feelings of abandonment or unresolved childhood pain. Sharon tries to reconnect, but Derek remains closed off, refusing to let his guard down. Later, in an effort to bring some joy to everyone's lives, Sharon invites Ed and the children to go roller skating for a bit of fun. At first, Ed refuses, insisting that he has too much work to do. However, after being persuaded by Sharon and the kids, and seeing their hopeful smiles, he reluctantly agrees to join them. During their skating session, Sharon briefly opens up about her past. She reveals that she married young and had a son, but her husband left her and their child to chase his dream of forming a music band. Despite everything, Sharon still tries her best to reconnect with Derek and mend their broken bond. The following day, Sharon suggests that Ed sell his house to pay off his overwhelming medical bills. She argues that the money from the sale could help cover expenses and provide Michelle with better care. However, Ed firmly refuses. The house holds too many precious memories of Teresa, and he simply can't bear to part with it. The walls, the rooms, and even the smell of the house remind him of the woman he loved. Determined to help him anyway, Sharon goes to the hospital to file a formal appeal asking the administrators to forgive or cancel Ed's massive medical debt. No one knows exactly what she said or how she managed to persuade them, but somehow, miraculously, the hospital agrees to completely waive the entire $432,000 bill. It's an unbelievable outcome that even Sharon herself struggles to believe. Overjoyed, Sharon rushes to tell Ed the good news. Upon hearing it, Ed is stunned and overwhelmed with emotion. For a few seconds, he's speechless, then tears well up in his eyes. He breaks down crying, unable to contain his gratitude for Sharon's kindness and persistence. For the first time, Ed begins to truly see her not as a stranger, but as someone who genuinely cares. That night, while Sharon is reading a bedtime story to Michelle, the little girl suddenly starts coughing up blood. Without wasting a second, Ed's co-workers immediately call him at work to inform him that Michelle has been rushed to the hospital. Shocked and terrified, Ed drops everything and rushes out the door to be with his daughter. At the hospital, The doctor explains that Michelle urgently needs a liver donor, and without a transplant soon, she might only have 4 weeks left to live. He also advises Ed to prepare a private plane, since once a donor becomes available, Michelle will need to be flown to a children's hospital in Omaha, about 100 kilometers away. Ed, frustrated and desperate, lashes out in disbelief. How could he possibly arrange for a private plane when he's already drowning in debt? But Sharon stays calm, looks him in the eye, and says, "We'll find a way." Determined to help once again, Sharon begins contacting several corporate CEOs who own private jets. Most of them refuse to take her calls, dismissing her as just another stranger asking for favors. But Sharon doesn't give up. She decides to visit a company called First Bank of Kentucky, bringing trays of freshly baked muffins to share with the staff. As she warmly tells them about the Schmidt family's heartbreaking struggle, one employee named Jenny, who had earlier refused to connect her call to the CEO, Albert, becomes moved by her sincerity. Touched by Sharon's compassion, Jenny insists that Albert speak with her directly. To everyone's surprise, Sharon successfully convinces Albert to help, securing 5 available planes that could be used to transport Michelle to Omaha. When Ed and his mother hear the news, they're overjoyed and deeply relieved. One of their biggest worries has just been solved. For the first time in weeks, Ed feels a flicker of hope. Later that evening, while watching television, Sharon suddenly gets an idea. She decides to contact local news reporters and invites them to interview Michelle, hoping to share the family's story with the world and raise public awareness. However, Ed strongly disagrees with the plan. He tells her angrily that he doesn't want to look like someone begging for sympathy or money on TV. His harsh words cut deep, and Sharon, visibly hurt, becomes emotionally shaken and quiet. Feeling distressed and rejected, Sharon opens her refrigerator and notices several bottles of alcohol. To calm her nerves, she starts drinking, telling herself that just one glass will help her relax. But one glass quickly turns into several, and soon she ends up drinking too much and gets drunk again. In her intoxicated state, she stumbles around the house, accidentally frightening Michelle and speaking incoherently. When Ed finds out, he immediately rushes to check on her. Angry and disappointed, he tells Sharon to leave his house immediately. Holding back tears, Sharon confesses that drinking is the only way she knows to silence the voices in her head, voices that constantly whisper that she's a bad person, unworthy of love, and completely worthless. Hearing this, Ed's anger fades. For the first time, he begins to truly understand Sharon's inner pain. Sharon, feeling ashamed, quietly leaves. After that night, Sharon makes a life-changing decision. With Rose's encouragement, she returns to her support group and starts sharing her story openly. Little by little, she begins to heal. At the same time, Ed starts to reconnect with his faith, attending church services in search of strength and peace. Days later, on January 17, 1994, a massive snowstorm hits their town. Ed goes out to buy groceries, preparing for the worst in case they become snowed in. Suddenly, the home phone rings. It's the hospital calling to inform him that they've finally found a liver donor for Michelle. Panicked but filled with hope, Ed quickly gets ready to leave for Omaha. However, his mother warns him that it's impossible. The roads are buried under snow, and the airport has been shut down because of the blizzard. Desperate and running out of options, Ed calls Sharon for help. Sharon immediately comes up with a plan to get them to the airport safely. Thanks to her many contacts, she learns which routes are still open. She tells Ed that the only possible route is through Canyon Creek Road, but soon bad news arrives. A truck accident has blocked the road completely. Checking his map, Ed decides to take a dangerous shortcut to the airport. Meanwhile, Sharon, inspired by Rose's suggestion, calls a TV news anchor to help arrange a helicopter rescue. As Ed drives through the storm, a fallen tree blocks his path. He desperately tries to move it, pushing with all his strength, but it's far too heavy. Just when hope begins to fade, news breaks that a volunteer pilot has agreed to risk flying through the storm to pick them up. A local pastor from Ed's church also offers his help, providing an open field near the church as a landing zone for the helicopter. Moments later, Ed is picked up by 2 of Sharon's friends, and together they rush through the storm toward the church. While Sharon and the others are out in the freezing cold, digging through piles of snow to clear the landing area, Derek suddenly appears. He tells Sharon that he heard all her voicemails and realized how much she cares, He has come to help her dig out the snow. The moment marks a quiet reconciliation between mother and son. Moments later, the helicopter appears in the distance, but the pilot can't see the landing zone because of the blizzard. Thinking quickly, everyone turns on their car headlights and lays their brightly colored jackets on the ground to mark the area. Finally, after tense moments, the helicopter manages to land safely, and Ed and Michelle are quickly airlifted to the airport. Michelle's surgery goes smoothly, and after some time, she fully recovers. The film ends with a heartwarming glimpse of Michelle years later, now a healthy, happy young woman, surrounded by love, laughter, and the people who once fought so hard to save her. And that's where the story concludes. A powerful and emotional tale of faith, compassion, redemption, and the extraordinary power of human kindness.